So
quality
I'm
of
going to
their
switch gears
healthcare.
here.
Your patients are prioritized over, profits and making money and seeing that hockey stick growth within your company.
So how do you in the companies that you work with, there's going to be people inside the companies that may not take shortcuts, but they want to push growth and maybe I don't know how to characterize this without sounding like I'm throwing somebody under the bus. But there's a tendency, we want to accelerate our growth. And so how do we do this and stay in compliance with what we need to stay in compliance with, and really, make sure that we're taking care of our customers along the way. But then we also need to protect our profits. And if we have investors and so forth, the balance there.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely hard. I think, one of the important things that I try to emphasize to clients is that, you have to look at the long term versus the short term. I was just meeting with a client this morning, and they were to some extent don't totally understand, like, why is this necessary? Why does this have to be done? And I could say, listen, is it likely that a regulator is going to knock on your door tomorrow if you don't do this? No, but I can tell you that when you go to raise your Series A or you go to raise your Series B, that investors are going to expect that this is in place. And so, sure, maybe you gain customers in the short term, or you see a big increase in revenue, or you avoid the expense of hiring a lawyer who's going to cost you money in order to get these right compliance things in place. But in the long term, it's going to cost you money because maybe a regulator does show up, or maybe an investor starts looking and you don't have these things in place, and they say, well, we're going to walk away from this deal. Or they say, well, okay, but you're either going to have to sort of you're going to have to insure us against this risk that we're all now aware of, or your company is just going to be worth less because when we come in, we're going to have to put all of these things in place. So I think it's important for clients to emphasize to clients that, hey, listen, you're not building this for tomorrow. You're building this for Series B, Series C, Series D. And in order to do that, you need to put these things in place and focus on that long term rather than short term. That's really hard to do when investors are pressuring you to grow, to see new patients, to increase revenue every month after month after month, or to cut expenses, or to see that EBITDA grow, to see expenses decrease. But I think it's always worth it in the long run.
So do you end up coaching sometimes entrepreneurs on how to handle the investors?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I sat in. I came in right at Series A in my first company. We did a bridge round. We did a Series AA, and so. And I also have worked, extensively with private equity people, either private equity like purchasing practices, and so I know what the investors are going to say. I know what they're looking for. I know what objections are going to come up, and so I absolutely coach, my clients on, hey, how to respond, how do you sell this to the board, and how do you explain this risk to them, and sometimes it's just a conversation where I'm having that. Sometimes it's a complex memo where I'm like, hey, walk in, have this prepared to show to your board so that they understand. And especially in smaller companies, sometimes even the board doesn't necessarily understand what their responsibility is. And so, there's also sometimes it's a matter of educating the board and saying, hey, listen, you could ultimately be held responsible if you're not monitoring this, if you're not paying attention to this. And so that usually works pretty well to get people's attention for sure.